Hi everyone, I want to welcome you to Community Links and to our Kids Have Stress Due presentation today. My name is Alyssa.
And I'm Alicia.
So we'll be going through a bit of a PowerPoint with you, as well as some strategies on obviously how to help your kids with stress and kind of what's going on right now. I know it's been an especially stressful time, so hopefully we can give you some strategies that will help you out and will help your kids out as well.
All right, so we are going to get started. So we are going to talk, first of all, about different types of stress. So there's a few different types of stress that both children and adults can experience. And these different types of stress, there's different factors that contribute to them, and then different outcomes as well. So the first type of stress we want to talk about is positive stress. Positive stress is what we experience. It's a normal part of our daily lives, such as things like holidays, birthdays, having to go on vacation, any types of kind of those normal daily changes. And what we know about positive stress is that learning to adjust to that is a part of our healthy development. So that's something that, that's why it's called positive stress, because as we learn to deal with that, it's an asset for us to be able to cope with other stressful events. Then we have tolerable stress. So tolerable stress is more of a difficult experience. So not something like a birthday or a vacation, maybe something like having to move, a separation, possibly a death of a loved one. So something that is a bit more of a difficult experience. It can take place over a long period of time. What we see with tolerable stress is that if there is a supportive adult who can create a safe environment and help the child learn to recover and talk about their feelings and process that stress, then that can still be a normal part of that developmental experience. When that switches to toxic stress, which is our last part of stress, these are some of those more unhappy or difficult stressful experiences, but there's a lack of caring adults, there's a lack of that supportive and coping environment and learning how to deal with that stressful event. And what we know about that is that it can have a negative impact on kiddos' brain development. So our goal here is really to be able to give you strategies to help your kids cope with that stress so we can keep them in that kind of tolerable and positive stress range.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to avoid toxic stress at all costs.
Yes, please.
All right. So some of the key concepts we are going to be talking about today, so this is just a bit of an outline. So we will go through some of the signs and symptoms of too much stress. We will discuss how to help your children acknowledge, kind of cope and express their feelings. We'll demonstrate some strategies as well. So there's some relaxation strategies you can do with your kids. And like I said, these can often help you as the adult as well. We'll talk about teaching problem-solving skills, how to create sort of that less stressful environment for children. We will talk about negative and positive self-talk, so how to encourage self-talk or positive self-talk, and physical activity as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. So first we're going to look at some of those signs and symptoms of too much stress. So what stress can really look like. And as we go through these, I mean, as Alyssa said, these things are not exclusive to kiddos. You'll probably recognize some places where you fall on this list as well. But really we've got some of those physical reactions that we feel in our bodies. So tense muscles, fatigue, trouble sleeping, having a stomach ache can be really common when there's too much stress. And then there's the feelings that are associated with that. So a lot of times if there's too much stress, people can feel angry, sad, panicked, or withdrawn. And then we look at what is going on in our mind. So a lot of times, again, kiddos and adults, if there's too much stress, can be forgetful, can often be confused or easily distracted or struggle to concentrate. And then there's really the behaviors that come as an outcome of all of these things combined. So that can look like poor listening, whining, nail biting, crying, struggling in school. So the point of this is that there's lots of different components of the way stress can express itself. There's physical symptoms, behavioral symptoms, and it's important to be aware of these because a lot of times when some of these things show up, we look at them in isolation, or we don't see it as a whole picture as an indicator of stress. So being familiar with what some of these things look like can help us get a picture of that. So for example, the first thing under the body list is stomach ache. If your kiddo has a stomach ache, probably the first thing that you want to jump to isn't that it might be a sign of too much stress. Check and see how they're feeling physically, and if they're feeling sick. But if you notice that, maybe your kiddo's getting a stomach ache every day before going to school, and then you're noticing that they're also maybe feeling fearful and anxious, they're struggling to concentrate, and that's coming out as poor school performance. So then you see those symptoms that are all across the board there, then you can get a better picture of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think too, right now we are all sort of in society feeling obviously that extra stress right now. Our mental health is taking a bit of a beating. So I think it's kind of giving yourself a bit of a break as well. When you notice kind of signs and symptoms in yourself, you tend to be a little less tolerant of maybe when you're looking at some of those negative behaviors that are coming out in your kids. So I think if you just can build that awareness in that, okay, I'm feeling these things. I know that, my child's whining or they're not listening. And that can be extremely frustrating as a parent. I've got a 17-year-old, 14-year-old myself. So I've definitely experienced some of these things. But it's maybe just taking that step back and going, okay, right now I'm not dealing very well. I know my child's not dealing very well, so it can kind of give you a bit of insight into that behavior. And when you can kind of putting a meaning behind that behavior, it can make it a little more tolerable. I know that might sound like a stretch, but it's just understanding it. When you can understand it, it just makes it a little easier to deal with, and you can come up with some tools, which is obviously what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think something that stands out for me in relation to that, one of the things on the list here under body is bedwetting.
Yes.
So something that we can see with kids, if there's too much stress, a lot of the times there can be a regression in certain behaviors. And like Alyssa was saying, that can be really frustrating as a parent. But if you're able to determine, that this is happening because of a stressful situation, then, as you were saying, it can be a little bit easier to kind of take a step back, reevaluate what's going on, and then approach it from a different perspective, instead of just being very frustrated that you thought you were making all this progress and you've seen a regression. Yeah.
All right, so getting your child's point of view. So we're going to talk about acknowledging feelings. That's kind of the first step, right? Is getting their point of view, asking them what worries them, what's upsetting them. Have those conversations. Have conversations about what they do when they're feeling upset. If they can't answer that question, you can make observations. I notice when you come home from school some days, you're angry, you don't want to talk. They might not even be aware, right? So it's kind of having those conversations. And what's important about this is have those conversations when you're both feeling calm and able to talk. But really getting that point of view from your child is very important, especially if they are verbal. I think in this particular group, I know there are people registered. We have an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and I think a 4-year-old. So even at 4, they can start talking about feelings for sure. And for sure, your 8 and 10-year-old, they still might need some guidance depending on how much practice they have. But we tend to, as parents, especially and adults, make assumptions about what's bothering them. And sometimes they can really throw you for a loop, and it's not at all what you actually thought it was. So take the time and have those conversations. I do find car rides, by the way, are a great time to have conversations when you're both kind of calm, because your child's somewhat trapped, and you can you can have that conversation with them without them escaping.
Yeah, and there's not that pressure for direct eye contact either if you're in the car.
Yeah.
Another one that I find can be, it depends what your evening routine looks like, but I do know a lot of parents, kind of a bedtime check-in can be something that works into a lot of schedules as well. But I think the key there is making sure that you're calm and you're open to hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, and I did the bedtime one, I know, with my son. He tends to be a little anxious, but just then maybe back up your bedtime a bit to make it earlier, just to make sure you have that time, right? That setting aside that time really, it shows your child that you think they're important as well, and that you're ready to listen and have that conversation with them.
Absolutely. And then we also kind of want to stop, look, and listen. So that's going to carry us into something that we're going to talk about a little later. So remember about that one. Things to keep in mind as we're having these discussions with our kiddos about feelings. Learning how to manage big feelings, learning how to manage stress is something that can be tough for adults. And we've had lots of years of practice learning how to, cope with and communicate our feelings. So take a beat and remember, that they don't have everything figured out yet, and we need to kind of help them along with that process. And it's okay if you're still learning yourself. Doing this with your kids is a great way to kind of refresh and become more comfortable talking about these different feelings. Something else to keep in mind is that children don't always have the vocabulary to make sense of their feelings. So even, Alyssa was saying you've got a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So even though the language might have progressed, that feelings language might not be, they might not be as comfortable using different words to describe their feelings. So they might need help learning different ways to communicate that, learning different words that relate to more complex feelings, especially as they get older, and how to handle those things in a productive way.
So how can we help? So really paying attention to your children, listening to them for those cues about how they feel. Modeling is a really important one. If your child sees you having what I'm going to call an adult tantrum, where you're stomping around or slamming doors, they are watching you, and as they obviously mimic our positive behaviors, which is what we want, they're really, really good, I find, at finding those negative ones that they see, words and special phrases that you might use. So really being aware of that. What are you doing when you're upset? What do you want your child to do? Maybe you're modeling that you need to step back. And it's okay to say, right? So on the PowerPoint here, it says share your own emotions with them. When appropriate as well is a key point to that. You don't want to be sharing your big adult problems with them. But it's okay if you're feeling frustrated, saying, I'm sorry, I'm really frustrated right now. So I just need a few minutes to go and kind of take some breaths and calm down. And then when I come back, we can talk about whatever. It's okay for you to show them that those feelings exist in you as well. So really just being aware that you are modeling what you want them to do as well, because they're watching our every move, unfortunately, sometimes. We will also be talking about the stress stoplight. So this is obviously it's a familiar image that children of many ages recognize. So we'll be talking a little bit about how to use that sort of stoplight image when we're talking about the 3 stages of stress reduction too.
Yeah, and something I want to say about that too, about the sharing your emotions appropriately. That doesn't mean that, you need to be super hard on yourself if, you do end up having an adult tantrum. It's just about being mindful of that. And I think a big piece is it's okay to have a conversation maybe after you haven't handled your emotions maybe in the way that you wish you would have.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so it's okay to go to your kiddos and say, I was feeling really frustrated, and you might have seen me slamming the door or raising my voice. I'm sorry, wasn't the best way that I could have handled that. Something that helps me when I'm frustrated, like you said, is to take a couple breaths and walk away, and I didn't do that. So that's something for me to keep in mind for next time. So that's something that is okay as well. And I know sometimes it's hard to kind of bite the bullet and own up to your behavior in front of
apologizing is hard, and apologizing to your kids is even harder, but it's a really important teaching tool, really.
All right, so let's talk about the stress stoplight. So as Alyssa mentioned, it is a familiar tool, and so that way it's great to kind of take that image and correlate it to 3 stages of kind of stress and managing stress. So when we're talking about the red light, so that means stop, which is great because that kind of coincides with what we know it already means, but that means it's a red alert for recognizing that we're stressed. When we're feeling like that stress is really high, our kiddos, and us included, go into a different part of our brain where we're not really able to reason or focus, so we just kind of need to stop and take a breather. The yellow light symbolizes kind of needing to change, needing to slow down and look at where we're at. Maybe we're noticing that stress is getting a little bit higher, and that's when we want to start using some of our tools to kind of bring us back down and give us some more control in that environment. And then the green light means go. So that means we can recognize that we've dealt with the stressful situation, we're feeling better, and we're ready to move forward.
All right, so just talking about these a little bit more. So again, Alicia said red means stop, right? Stop and think. So you're going to notice your child in red when maybe they are expressing feelings that they're really worried. Maybe they're crying, maybe they're yelling, maybe they have hit their sibling. It's going to be pretty obvious when they're in the red. And it would be pretty obvious for you when you're in the red as well. So like Alicia said, this isn't the time that you're going to have conversations, because nobody can think clearly and have a conversation, a problem-solving type conversation when you're in the red. The idea at this point is we want to try to get them to calm down. We want to validate their feelings, but we need to get them sort of in the next sort of yellow stage where they're a little more calm, so we can start to think about what we want to do next. And we want to give our kids those tools so that they can move into more that yellow zone, where we can then move into green after that. So really just, this is where you're going to want to get your tools out and remind your children of the tools, or kind of direct them into what tools they're going to use and strategies, so that we can get them out of red and into the yellow.
Yeah, and I think an important thing about that, I mean, we're talking about tools and reminding them of tools. I think the remind part is a key word. We don't want to be introducing new tools for the first time when they're in red. You know, we've never talked about breathing. We've never talked about different ways to calm down. When they're in this red stage, that's not when we want to introduce those, because, you know, they're not really in that clear state of thought. So the goal is to introduce some of these strategies at a different time when they're more calm, so that they can become familiar with them, and then you can pull them out when they're in that at that red light stage.
Yeah, you'll already have your toolbox ready to go, so you'll be able to kind of move them into whatever tool you guys have agreed upon before.
Absolutely. All right. And then, so yellow light, that's when we're really going to be using these tools. So red, when we talk about red and starting to use those tools, that might just be removing yourself from the situation. That might be, I just need a hug to be able to get back down in that yellow. But once we get them back into that yellow, we can help them explore different activities that are more productive, that might include different ways to relax, different ways to move their body, engaging in positive self-talk and problem solving. So we're going to talk about those two parts there, the self-talk and problem solving, a little bit more, but those things are more unique to that yellow light phase, because that's when our kiddos come back to that kind of cognitive space where they're more engaged with their minds, and out of that just kind of red rage state. Something to keep in mind as we talk about these different tools and what you want to use in that yellow light phase is that some kids prefer certain tools, and some kids might not respond well to a certain tool. And it depends, you know, might depend on the situation, depends on the kid. So we're going to talk about a few different strategies and just kind of get you guys started building those toolbox. But it's going to look different for everybody. So keep that in mind as well.
So green is when your brain is regulated. Green is when you can think. Green is when you're calm, you're better able to cope. So green means go, right? So it's a comfortable place to be. This is when we all, children and adults, we think, we learn, we just do better when we're in green. So the idea, again, we're going to try different strategies to kind of help your child try different strategies as well to see what they enjoy. So this is when you're going to introduce those strategies. This is when you can play we'll talk about the what if game as well later on, but it's a chance to practice and have some fun and see what your child's going to enjoy, things that you enjoy, kind of an idea sharing. And like I said, really want to practice them and get them kind of down pat before you kind of are in that red zone when you are now trying to implement them. So this is where we all want to be. This is, I know we're not at all times, but this is sort of our ideal stage. And this is, like I said, is when you can actually practice things and have conversations and come up with ways to solve problems.
Yeah, and so on a couple slides earlier, we mentioned that kind of stop, look, and listen. And I think that kind of comes into this whole picture with the green light. It goes back to our different chart with all those different feelings, is understanding for yourself and your kids, what does green look like for them in their body and their feelings and their behavior? What does yellow look like for their body, feelings, and behavior? And then what does red look like? So as Alyssa mentioned, with red, it could be screaming, it could be hitting. Some kids, it could be crying. Yellow might be, I'm just a little too silly. Maybe I'm moving my body a lot. I'm just in that middle area. So a big part of this too is understanding what those physical and behavioral and emotional responses are for these different lights and stages of stress. All right. So relaxation strategies. This is where we're going to kind of talk to you a little bit about what we can introduce in that green light stage and different things we can start to familiarize ourselves and our kids with. Because learning ways to relax our bodies, relax our minds is a really great skill that can help kids, from now at this young age throughout their life. And finding different relaxation strategies are great for different environments as well. If we can find some different things that work, they can be helpful at home, at school, and kind of whatever their environment looks like. So when it comes to some relaxation strategies, what we can do as parents is model relaxation strategies when you feel stress. So we talked about modeling, talking about our feelings. So modeling those relaxation strategies is also really important. What am I doing? Maybe you do yoga, maybe you like to go for a walk and say, mom just needs to relax right now. I'm going to go out and go for a walk. Do you want to come with me? Going for a walk makes my body and my mind feel good, or things like that. So letting them know what you're doing when you feel stressed is an important piece there. Something else you can do is make relaxation strategies a part of your regular routine. So it's something you do first thing in the morning. Maybe it's something you do if you notice, after school is a really stressful time, or, if that bedtime routine is tough, then incorporating relaxation strategies as part of that routine helps kind of set your kids up for success in dealing with those stressful times and tough feelings. It's also great, to do those things when they might need to, focus to reduce frustration. There's lots of different reasons you can pull those relaxation strategies in. Again, sometimes that'll depend on your kiddos. If you find that your kiddo really struggles to focus, doing some relaxation strategies first might be a really good idea. And what's great is you can do it with them. So that kind of goes back to that modeling, right? When they see you do things and they see that it works for you, they're more invested. So it's really great if you're doing some breathing exercises, or if you're stretching, or whatever you guys decide works for you in terms of relaxation or works for them. If you guys can do it together, it really gets them on board with that.
And they want to spend time with you, right? So remember that as well. It can actually make it an enjoyable activity just for the two of you to do together. So you're spending time with them and you're actually doing something to kind of help you both sort of relax and refocus and reset.
We're going to demonstrate some of our relaxation activities for you.
All right, so the first one's deep breathing. I mean, this is kind of obviously an obvious one, where you're just kind of inhaling through your nose and then exhaling through your mouth. Another one that I did this one with my son. Like I said, he still does deal with anxiety, but it's 4 square breathing. So basically what you're doing is you're inhaling to the count of 4, you're holding it for the count of 4, you're exhaling for the count of 4, and then you wait for the count of 4. So it's 4 square breathing, or box breathing is another way. So the idea is it really slows everything down. You don't want to do it too quickly because you're going to start to hyperventilate, and now you've got a whole other issue there.
Yeah. There's some other ways too. A lot of times if we just tell our kids to breathe, they're like, yeah, I'm not really interested in what you have to say. So there's different ways that you can get them engaged. One that I really like is pretending that your fingers are birthday candles and you have to breathe in and blow out for each candle. And again, that just kind of slows it down because you need to take those deep breaths. Another one is, you can pretend that you're filling up a balloon until it pops. So, and you can imagine that balloon filling up. You can participate with them. You can get that balloon bigger and bigger and bigger until it pops. So there's different ways that you can incorporate, breathing activities so that they're a little bit more engaged and they're not just going to kind of write it off as like, mom totally agrees.
Preschoolers really like the balloon one, especially if you're the adult pretending you're the balloon as they're blowing, and then you do this pop thing. So again, you're kind of using the breathing technique along with a bit of a fun and distracting technique as well to kind of calm your child down. School age, that one might not work as well, but preschoolers love that one.
Yeah. All right, the next one that we've got here is kind of the cloud push. So really what that is just a big stretch. So we're just going to pretend that we're pushing the clouds out of the way. So we're going to reach our hands way up, and we're going to push those clouds. You push them out of the way.
Oh, that actually feels really good.
I know, it does feel great.
You realize all the knots you've got in your shoulders and your back when you're doing this.
Yeah, I know. Some of these, we gear them towards kids, but everything on here is excellent for adults as well.
You can also do wall pushes as well. So, we talk about punching a pillow and all that, but you can push as hard as you want on a wall, right? And I think this cover's going to fly open as soon as I let go. But it really allows you to kind of exert some energy and get some of that frustration out without destroying things. So it's a healthy way to kind of get some of that physical energy out of your body.
The other one that I really like is, for kiddos, we call it go tight, go loose.
Yeah.
For adults, it's called progressive muscle relaxation. So if you are interested in that, it's a great thing to do. It's a good one to do any time of day. It's great if your kiddos at bedtime, if either you or your kids struggle to go to sleep.
Yeah.
The go tight, go loose one is great. So what that really means is you're going to tighten your muscles. We usually start at our toes and work our way up our body. So you're going to tense your muscles, and you're going to feel them, and then you're going to let them go. So you can start that with your feet, and then you can move up your legs, and you can tense your muscles, tense, and then let them go. And you do that through your whole body, and it really engages those muscles. It really releases some good energy and leaves everybody feeling.
Yeah, this is one I did do again with my son at bedtime. We also did it in one of the groups that we do here called Managing Big Feelings, which we can kind of touch on at the end to kind of give you some other resources in that. Kids love when you do the butt one because they think that one's hilarious. But it really does, even as an adult, I use this one because as soon as you tense that muscle and let it go, it really does get rid of the tension in that particular muscle. So you do work your way up, and then you do your face at the end. You scrunch it up, make really funny face.
That's another popular one.
And then you the last one you do is your entire body. So you got everything just all tensed up. Again, it's really nice if you're laying down, and then you just kind of let it fall. Yeah. It is a really great one, like Alicia said, at bed. So. Kid cuddle. So this one they can do on their own. So it might be a tool that they pick when they are in the red. Physical type ones tend to be really common for kids. We had a little girl, her way to calm down was to actually go to headstands. And I don't know if probably because I'm thinking the blood rush, it kind of goes to your head. But kid cuddle is essentially you take your arms and you wrap them around you as tight as you can. Now, obviously, it actually does. It kind of gets rid of the tension in your back and that. So that way they can hold it for as long as they want. You might get involved in the kid cuddle, though. Some kids might like you applying that pressure to them as well, and giving them that kind of deep squeeze that they might need to calm down.
All right, and then the next one that we're going to talk about is worry bubbles.
So it's another favorite activity of kids is blowing bubbles, right?
So in that one, we are pretending to blow bubbles.
Or you are actually
blowing real bubbles.
Yeah.
And in this one,
they're picturing, they might verbalize a worry, right? Like maybe one of their biggest worries. So I'm trying to think of one. I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to fall asleep tonight. It was a common one that we had in my house. Or I'm worried that I'm not going to do well tomorrow on my test, whatever it might be. And then you picture that worry in your bubble, and then you blow your bubble, and the idea is that you're kind of watching that worry fall away or blow away, I guess.
Yeah.
The other one that you can do as well So I know this is a Kleenex box, but when it's empty or you've got a different kind of box at home, a worry box is another great tool to use. So again, we kind of mentioned about working some of these strategies into your daily routine. So this could be another one to do at bedtime. Kids tend to bring up things, and adults too, right? I don't know if any of you have experienced you're trying to fall asleep and your brain is racing. It's a mile a minute. And it helps if you take time to either get your phone, so you got like your notes out and you write down all of your to-do lists. That can kind of help get it out of your head so you can fall asleep. Or you might keep a notepad by your bed, whatever it is. So for a child, a great strategy is they write out their worries, or you can write them out for them, because I know kids love writing nowadays. And you put the worry in your box. So it gives them a definitive time that we can talk about all your worries for this time. So we're going to talk about them from 7 p.m. to 7:30. And you can talk about all of your worries, write down everything you're worried about, no matter what it was, no matter what it is, no matter how silly you might think it is. All those worries get put in your box. And then tomorrow we can pull them out, see what's still bothering you, or you might have different ones. But the idea is it kind of keeps them, but it gets them out of their brains. And it actually does work. This was a pretty successful strategy that we used, because it allows you to stop thinking about it, because you've written it out for one, and it's now in your box and you can deal with it another time.
Yeah, and it's what I really like about the worry box is it does allow you to come back and revisit things. And as we progress, and we're going to talk about problem solving, it's really important to come back to these things and not just kind of brush them under the rug when they're not, the present main focus. So I think the worry box is a great way to kind of incorporate that as well, and make sure that you're checking in with your kids to see, is this still something that they're worried about, or have we done what we needed to do in order to help them cope with that?
And when they're in the green zone is the time that you're going to take that out again and talk about them, right? So again, they're regulated.
Exactly. Another thing that can be helpful, using music is a great way to get kiddos to relax. I mean, we talked about moving our bodies and things like that. You can use music as you transition between activities. Also just putting on some music, and maybe we move our bodies, maybe we dance a little bit. Or maybe it's some calming music before bedtime. It's a very good way to kind of cue the body, cue the brain. So like I said, either some happy music if we're going to dance and kind of let our worries out, or some calm music if we want to relax that body. Really sends a trigger to the brain, and can help with those transitions in stressful times.
And it can be really useful in setting up a less stressful or active environment too. So it's amazing how powerful music can be if you've just got some calm music on in the background. So maybe it is on when they come home from school. Make sure it's not aggravating to them as well. You're not doing it just to drive them crazy. But it is very powerful if you've got a room of kids. We used to, when I did a singing group with toddlers, we would do one particular song. It was called Baby Alligator, and it worked every single time to kind of bring that group back and just kind of get everybody calm again. So don't underestimate the power of music.
No, that's another good one too. And then something to keep in mind when we're stretching, when we're doing some of these relaxation tools, is go from kind of the more high energy activities to some of those more deep relaxation strategies. So if we don't want to do some, the go tight, go loose, and then maybe we're going to dance and go crazy, because that's going to bring them back up again in terms of that level of energy, maybe that stress level. So maybe we want to shake our sillies out. So we get up and we shake all of our sillies out. Or, we dance and we dance all of our worries away. And then maybe after that, maybe they're a little bit tired, gotten some of that energy out. Then we want to do go tight, go loose. Or then we want to do some cloud pushes. So we want to be moving them into a more relaxed state instead of going backwards.
Yeah, it's really hard if your child's energy is up here that you just start down here. So you really kind of want to work your way down. And it's knowing your child too, what's going to work for them.
For sure. All right, so now that we have some relaxation strategies under our belts, we're going to talk a little bit about problem solving and why problem solving is an important part of coping with stress and managing some of those tough feelings. So problem solving, I think, is one of the most important skills that our kiddos can learn.
It's an important life skill in general.
It's a great life skill, and the reason for that is because it gives children a tool to gain control over themselves and over a situation and their own emotions. So what we do when we're problem solving is we're coming up with options and different ways that they can respond to a situation, and different things that they have control over, so that way they know that they have options, they have choices, they have things that they're in control over, and that helps to limit the amount of times that they give up or act impulsively or let their feelings kind of take over and run the show.
All right. So these are the 5 basic steps in problem solving. I know it looks super simple, and we know that it is not always simple to kind of do those different steps. So the first step, before I talk about our little hand over there, the first step is to identify the problem. So we want to find out what happened. We want to find out what's wrong. This can take some digging. Your child might not know. You might have to talk it out with them to figure out exactly what the problem is, what the underlying issue is, right? Again, checking your assumptions at the door. We don't want to be making assumptions. We really want to sort of talk to our children and find out what happened and what got them to that place. Assessing the problem. So this is kind of where our hand comes into the diagram, I guess. You're going to try to figure out how big the problem is. So again, preschoolers, younger school age, you can use this with. If you're using this with older kids, they might just tend to use one of these fingers, and that's going to not be very good at problem solving. But using the hand is really great because they can hold up how many fingers. They can tell you sort of how big that problem is, especially if they don't necessarily have the words or they're just not able to articulate how they're feeling or what how big this problem is, right? And it can kind of allow them to take a step back and really assess how big do they think this problem is. And we want to, again, introduce those feeling vocabulary words to get them to tell us how this problem is making them feel. The third step is to generate possible solutions. So what can we do about it? It can be silly solutions. It can be any solutions, right? So we want to be really just talking about all the potential options we have to deal with this problem. And then when you go to considering your potential outcomes in number 4, it's what might happen. So now you're going to break down those solutions. Okay, well, what's going to happen if maybe they came up with, well, I'm going to push them. I'm going to push them back. Okay, we've written that one down, or we talked about that one. So what could happen if now you push him back? What could happen if you ask for help, right? So you're starting to kind of weigh out what are the pros and cons of each of the solutions we picked. And then you're going to get to the point where, which one do you want to try first? It might take more than one go at this, right? Where it's not the first one you tried is the best one. But get them to sort of pick which one they want to give a go at and which one they want to try first. Evaluating solutions comes after they've tried it. So the problem has happened again. They've tried the solution they want to try first. And now you want to talk to them about, okay, how did that work? And maybe they're like, you know what, that actually worked way better. That worked great. Super. If it didn't, what else can we try? We go back to the solutions that we picked before. What else can we try? What can we try next time?
Yeah, and that evaluating solutions, I think that's the connection we were making with the worry box, where, coming back and revisiting those things that were a concern or were an issue is a great opportunity to evaluate what parts of the problem solving process have worked and been effective. All right, the what if game. So Alyssa mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the what if game is a really great way to engage kiddos and help them in that problem solving process to come up with different solutions and what they can do in different situations. So what that's going to look like is it's pretty simple. It's asking them what if questions. So for example, what if your brother came over and grabbed your toy while you were playing with it? What would you do? Or what if someone at school maybe said some things that weren't very nice about one of your friends? What would you do? So it helps them to think ahead and come up with those different scenarios. It gives them an opportunity to kind of practice those problem solving skills. what's great about the what if game is it also gives parents insight about where your children are at in the problem solving process.
Yes.
So if my question is, what is something, what if your brother came over and snatched your toy or took your toy while you were playing with it, and their first 4 solutions are, well, I'm going to hit him, I'm going to take his toy, I think we need to lock him outside for a few days because that wasn't very nice. It gives you a sense of, are they still in that impulsive phase of problem solving where they might let those emotions and the stress kind of take over, or are they able to kind of come up with some more complex solutions. So it gives you an insight into where they're at. What's great about this too is it doesn't have to be serious. If we're always using serious questions, the kiddos are like, it's not as much of a game and I don't really want to play this with you. So it's great to, come up with fun, engaging ways to do this as well. So, what if you could bring an animal home from the zoo? What would we bring? And how would we feed it? And where would it stay? So it's good to ask some of those follow-up questions as part of the what if process. And it's a game that everybody can play. So adults can play it too. You can get them to, ask you what if questions and things like that. So it's a really great way to kind of engage, practice those problem solving skills. You can make it fun. You can, but then you can also kind of steer it to a bit more of those kind of serious topics. Something to keep in mind, I know Alyssa said talking about feelings in the car is sometimes a great way to engage your kiddos because they can't get away and there's not that pressure. I find the what if game is an awesome activity to do in the car as well. So that's just something to keep in mind to practice that problem solving.
This is a great one too. You want to be obviously aware of your child and where they're at with their anxiety levels. So you don't want to do this with sort of high anxiety situations that's going to send them, sorry, I have a hair on my tongue. You don't want to do this. You don't want to create more anxiety than you need to, but it's also great for prepping your child for certain scenarios that might happen. I don't know of a parent who hasn't, for example, lost a child in a store. So if you play this game, right, when everyone's calm, everyone's happy, maybe you've done some of the sillier game type questions, and then one of them could be, what if you lost me in the store, right? So it's another just way to prep them for things that might come up. Mm-hmm. Again, you don't want to scare them, but if you know your child would be capable of sort of talking about this, it's really great to prepare them so they don't panic in that kind of situation, right? Mm-hmm. What if I did that one with my son? What if you can't fall asleep? What if you are awake all night? This was a big one. And it was trying to get him to realize that the world isn't going to end. And so it was like, well, I'm going to be tired the next day. And then it was like, guess what? You're going to sleep really well the next night because you are tired, right? So just trying to ease that anxiety a little bit.
Absolutely.
So things to keep in mind about problem solving. So again, we already talked about this. So you want to do this when you aren't going to be interrupted. Everyone needs to put their phones down, adults. Your child needs your full attention, and you need to be doing this when you are relaxed and when your child is relaxed as well. And you want to be a coach. You want to be there for your child. You want to help them figure out what the problem is, help them verbalize the problem, and then ask them questions. Ask them questions that are going to let them come up with solutions. I'm not saying they're not going to need your help. That comes with the coaching part. But you really want them to come up with as many solutions as possible, because if your child came up with the solution, they're way more likely to actually try it and remember it.
Absolutely. All right. So now that we've got, we've got some relaxation strategies, we can help them problem solve. Something that we can do as parents is help to create a less stressful environment. So there's a few steps that we can take that really help, can reduce some of that anxiety on a daily basis. So having a routine is a great part of that. And a routine is going to look different based on, you know, how many kids are in the house, how old they are, what they're capable of doing on their own, and things like that. But you can have a morning routine. So a morning routine might be, you know, we get up, we make our bed, we get dressed, we have breakfast, brush our teeth, and we go to school. You know, an afternoon or after school routine, or an evening bedtime routine. What's important to remember about routines is they're great to provide structure, but we don't want to get too rigid in those routines. We still want to be able to have flexibility for when different things come up. We just want to keep in mind that if there's going to be a change to that routine, we give our kids a heads up and let them know what they can expect. The next thing here is setting and discussing expectations. So that can be about, you know, behavior, about routines. It can be about what we want happening in the household and letting our kids know really what we expect from them. So a great way to do this is to set, you know, some basic ground rules in the home about, you know, expectations of, do we keep our hands to ourselves? Are we using nice inside voices? When we are stressed or having big feelings, do we lash out at others, or is our expectation that we're going to work together to calm down, and that you can come to mom and dad or whoever your caretaker is to be able to work through that. So being really clear with them, with kids, it's when you are setting expectations around behavior, rules, things like that, just remember it's not a one and done conversation.
No.
I know, you know, you can say, you know, well, we've already discussed that, they should know. They've got a lot of things on their plate. Kids, you know, and trying to figure out themselves, social situations, what the rules and expectations are. So regular reminders or having those expectations posted somewhere in the house can be really helpful. Other things that you can do in the environment to reduce stress is make sure that, you know, it's a safe environment. There's no obvious safety hazards. You know, we want to reduce clutter, being mindful of your tone of voice. We can use mood music, creating a comfy corner, or any place in the home that is, you know, might have soft blankets or pillows or a few different things, favorite stuffed animals or toys that can help them, you know, engage those relaxation strategies can be great. We want to give our kids choices, age-appropriate choices. You know, we don't want our 4-year-old maybe, I don't know, deciding, what's a big decision a 4-year-old shouldn't make?
Shouldn't make?
Yeah. I don't know, maybe they're not planning our next vacation. Or something like that, or how many days we're going to grandma's for, but they can decide between two pairs of pajamas that they want to wear.
Or maybe they never have to bathe again. That would be a choice a 4-year-old might make.
Yeah. Or they can absolutely decide what's for dinner, so it's, you know, all candy and chocolate. Something to keep in mind when you're providing choices is it's great to have two options, both of which you approve of. So, you know, if it's, I'm going to let you choose what's for dinner. It's going to be chicken and French fries, or it's going to be a hamburger and a salad. And that's might be a choice that they're able to make. So that's something to keep in mind. And then provide time and space for physical activity. So, you know, we want to incorporate those things into our daily or weekly routine. And make sure that they are able to kind of move their bodies. And we're going to touch on physical activity later, but that's an important part of that less stressful environment.
That one would be especially important too right now. If you happen to have an online student at home, that working this into your day will be especially important right now too.
Absolutely.
So self-talk. So this is our constant, we have it all the time. Adults have it, kids have it. It's our internal dialogue. It's the voice inside your heads. It happens all day. We don't even notice it. Negative self-talk obviously can create more stress. We want to encourage more positive self-talk. This is what can kind of give us more power. It can make us feel hopeful, reassured, and confident, right? And this is what we want our kids to feel. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can do that.
All right, and then there's negative self-talk. So like Alyssa said, that voice is kind of constantly going in our heads. And what's unfortunate is usually the stronger voice in our heads is the negative voice. And that draws attention to the things that maybe we dislike about ourselves, things that we're doing wrong, and things like that. So what's important to know about negative self-talk, it is kind of the one that we do find comes out more often just on its own, but that doesn't mean we can't train ourselves to use a more positive self-talk and engage that voice more often. So with negative self-talk, children also often use things like, short, powerful negative words, dumb, stupid, loser, and those are things that can kind of get stuck in their negative self-talk, especially if they hear those things from adults or, other people who they look up to, like an older sibling or a teacher. And those things become part of their self-talk, and that can become part of their identity. So it's important to, be aware of the things that we're saying out loud, paying attention to words that we might find our kids using about themselves or about other people, and just being mindful of that. So for example, negative self-talk could look like, I always lose, or I'm never going to be first. Whereas the positive version of that would be sometimes I win, or maybe another time I can be first. So it's great to be aware of what that looks like so you can start paying attention to those different patterns and how your kids talk to themselves.
So strategies for positive self-talk. So we really want to help our kids notice what they can do, right? What are their strengths? What are they capable of doing? Again, they learn by example. So if they hear you saying things that are positive throughout the day, it will encourage them to do the same. So things like an adult might say, well, even around body image, right? I don't want to get too much into that, but oh my God, I need to lose weight. Oh my God, like I'm so, you don't like how you look, right? So those types of things, kids are hearing those things and they're sort of internalizing those things, or you're like, oh my God, this is so hard, I can't do this. So those are types of things you just want to be aware of that might be coming out of your mouth. We want to acknowledge them for the positive qualities they possess. So maybe they do get frustrated easily, and this is a quality that you want to work with them on, but maybe they're hilarious. Maybe you just love being with them. Maybe they're super kind and caring and thoughtful, right? So make sure you tell them that. Make sure you say, like, I love spending time with you. That can be a huge compliment. Or, oh my goodness, you're so funny. Or, wow, that was such a thoughtful thing to do for mom or for your brother or sister, whatever. So really focusing on those things throughout the day can be very powerful for a child. And then again, I think a couple of the examples in the last slide sort of touched on this, how you can sort of reframe things. I never do it right. You can switch it to be like, I can fix this, or I can try again. A strategy I know, if they're working, I'm going to use homework for an example. So maybe it's a project and it's so overwhelming to them and they don't even know, they're like, I can't do this. It's too much. It's too hard. So it's too overwhelming to think of the whole thing, but maybe you can help them reframe it. I can do step one. So help them figure out what step, I can do this part. So this is where we're going to start. So it helps you also break it down into smaller pieces and help them realize that they can do things sort of one step at a time. They're capable of doing this part. Okay, now we're done this part. Now I can do this next part, right? So you're sort of making it a lot less overwhelming, but really just reframing it. I know a lot of kids, I hear this a lot, right? I can't do this, it's too hard. I don't get it. I'm never gonna understand this. So helping them figure out what do you understand? Like what parts can we focus on that you do get? And then talking nicely to yourself, right? So even pointing out to them what their two voices are. So when they do something right, I did a good job, I knew I could do it. Or maybe they didn't do so great. Maybe that wasn't my best work, but you know what? I'm gonna do better next time, and help them figure out what they learned from that. I did learn something, this is what I'm gonna do differently. Or the last example here, I feel sad about making a mess, I'll get a cloth to clean it up. So that goes into that problem solving piece, right? Yeah, it doesn't feel great when you do something not so awesome, but there are always solutions and people to help you out to kind of fix those things.
Yeah, and I think a couple things there. So when we talk about problem solving, and that like that negative self-talk, so that I can't do this, I can't figure it out, kids are much less likely to engage in that problem solving process.
Oh, for sure.
When that negative self-talk is kind of the main voice in their head. So when we can be aware of, you know, what we're saying and what we're telling them, and how they're talking to themselves, and the more kind of positive self-talk we notice, those are kind of cues that, you know, those are great opportunities to engage in problem solving and encourage that problem solving, and they're more likely to do that on their own. Another thing that I just wanted to mention about kind of acknowledging the positive qualities, I think it's really easy, you know, for us, if we're stressed or having a bad day, or if there's a recurring behavior or something that's challenging with our kiddos, to really
That's what you're focused on.
Yeah, to really hone in and focus on that. So, you know, maybe they're stubborn, and it becomes, we start seeing things like, oh, they're always so stubborn, or they never listen, or using absolutes and things like that, and focusing on some of those negative things. So I would just be mindful to kind of catch yourself, and be aware of how often you're highlighting those challenging behaviors, and the types of ways that you're characterizing that. So it's never, that's how they are, instead of that's something that they're doing. So they're stubborn instead of they are acting stubborn.
Or even one that you don't even think of negative, they're shy. This one is one of my pet peeves. Instead of saying they just need a little bit of time to warm up, right? Like that's just a temperamental character. That's just part of your kid's temperament. So when you label them they're shy, and they grow up thinking they're shy, I mean, it really doesn't encourage them to sort of display some more extroverted characteristics, right? Because they start to believe what they hear. Yeah. They start to believe very quickly what we tell them all the time.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if, you know, I'm saying that they never listen, they're going to interpret that and, you know, okay, well, I must just not be able to listen. I never listen. Whereas if, you know, you're taking time to acknowledge those positive things on a more regular basis, then those are going to be the things that they internalize about themselves.
It just, one more thing and I will move on, but it just reminded me of a strategy we often give parents to do. They might come in and say, my child is always crying. My child cries and whines all day long. And then we actually get that parent to go home and track throughout the day how often that's actually occurring, right? Because I think when it isn't a negative type behavior that is, like Alicia said, that's what we focus on and that's what you remember. But when you go to actually journal it or log it, you realize it's really not occurring all day long, and you start to actually notice some of the positive things that they are doing, and then you can kind of switch your focus a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. All right. Physical activity. So I did say we were going to come back to this when we talked about that stressful environment. Really being able to move your body, be active. We know, you know, scientifically that enhances mood. It releases, you know, good hormones in our body that help reduce stress. And it can help kids develop, you know, positive patterns for the rest of their life about engaging in physical activity and connecting physical activity to reduced stress. So what we can do is make, you know, that active play part of, you know, part of your regular schedule. And that doesn't mean, you know, it has to be every day. It's great if you're doing it at least a few times a week. If you can incorporate that every day, it's great. You know, vary it up, use different things. Maybe we get home, maybe today we're going to go back in the backyard and we're going to play tag for 20 minutes, and, you know, maybe the next day they've got soccer practice or things like that. But it's just important to identify the importance of incorporating that into the routine. We've talked about modeling different things throughout this this talk today. Physical activity falls into that category as well. So be an active role model. When kids see that being active is fun and that their parents enjoy it and it's something that they can do together, where they spend time together, then they're much more likely to engage in those activities and have fun as well. So what we know about physical activity is that it's related to a whole host of positive things for kids and youth. So better cholesterol, better blood pressure, their body composition, so their, muscle versus fat, bone density, their overall fitness, but things too like academic achievement, mental health, self-esteem. So there's so many pieces that go into that physical activity piece. It's important to keep in mind. So yeah,
get moving.
That's it. That's the thing we want you to remember about this one, is really just to get out there and get moving.
And it doesn't matter how, right? Just have fun.
All right. And that is the end of that part of our presentation.
So like I said, I'm hoping we gave you some strategies, obviously, to use, and some information that you can kind of relate and incorporate into your lives. If you still have questions, if you still have something that you just need help with, please reach out, and we can hook you up one-on-one with a parent mentor who can meet with you and talk specifically about things that you might be going through. As I mentioned at the beginning, please, we will be sending you the survey link. Please fill it out. These are crucial to our funding, so please take some time to do the survey. It's not too long.
Yeah, and we did touch on managing big feelings earlier in the session. So that is another group that we do run here. So we do it for two kind of age groups. We do 4 to 6-year-olds and then 7 to 10-year-olds. It's great because it's a program for parents and kids. So we have the kids kind of split off and they do some activities learning to manage their feelings, and then the parents work together and kind of get a handle of some of the same material that the kids are kind of going through. So it's a 2-night workshop. We've got we run them each twice a year. So there's a fall and then kind of a spring one for each age group. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out our website, or if you want to call for more information, that's a great one. I mentioned problem solving is a really important strategy. Stress management obviously is very important, but learning to manage those big feelings and cope with your emotions is up there too. So that's a great one to kind of support progress in this area as well.
And check out our website. You can see many of the other programs and workshops and services that we do offer here. Mm-hmm. And like Alicia said, definitely have a look at that Managing Big Feelings workshop, because it's a good one for this type of topic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're done.
I think so.
So we'll send you out through some links and some more information, and hopefully you enjoyed our presentation.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.